Okay, Dennis Young here, Primitive Substance, and I have a very special guest, part two, Richard Whitten and his amazing art, a master painter, and we're going to see more of his work, and he's going to discuss how they were made and what he does with them and everything else. Richard, thanks for doing this.
Oh, very welcome. Glad to be here again. Um,
Great.
I'm
So
looking
could
forward to going through this more with you.
Great. Well, continue on and let's see some more of your works. And this way you can discuss how you did them and everything else. It's fascinating.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and good.
There you go. It's there.
Excellent. Perfect.
Oh,
Um,
there you go.
where we left off was on a slide that starts showing the process of a painting. And it it is sort of a logical process that we see here, and it is truly a logical process, but it might feel like it's a lot shorter time
Mm,
than it actually takes. This print that I did on the left
right.
was one of the first machine images that I made, and it was in 2008 when I went to a residency in Ireland. Uh,
Oh,
and I had finished, you go to Ireland, one of the big problems with the residency overseas is transportation of your materials,
mm,
and on top of it, your product, because if you actually make a final product and you bring it back to the United States, they want to tax you on it.
right.
But so typically, if I go overseas for a residency, I'll just do drawings that can be packed away in a suitcase. And I had finished the agenda of things that I wanted to do, and was working with a printmaker, and he said, "Let's do a print." And I said, "Okay, fine, I'll do a print. We've got 3 days." And I'd been thinking about making a machine, but hadn't really done it. And so
Mm,
I just like drew this right out and made the print. And it sat there, literally
oh,
sat there for a number of years. Um, and then I said, okay, maybe, and actually, I might actually say that I hit a low point in the career, a somewhat low point. Um,
right.
I wasn't showing, I didn't have any pl shows lined up because, right now I'm used to having shows lined up for about 2 to 3 years,
Mm,
sometimes even 4 to 5 years out in the future. And at that point, I didn't have anything. So I felt like, oh, nobody's looking. And I said, let's just have fun,
yeah. Well,
right?
that's how, well, I got to tell the audience, that's how I saw your art was at a local museum.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's how this started. So
And
go
it was a
ahead.
it was a local museum that specialized in they have a wonderful collection of musical automata. So mechanical instruments that play music. And the reason why I was there was that it fit as an artist that made paintings that were of machines that had
Mm,
some similarity to the ideas behind how their collection worked. I look at their boxes of musical instrument boxes or let's say music boxes as worlds inside boxes. And if you
mm,
remember with these paintings, these are worlds inside a painting. So there was a very nice fit for that
yeah.
museum, and
I
it
just
was
got
a wonderful
Go
show.
ahead. I just got to give it a plug. It's the Morris Museum. So anybody in New Jersey, it's a really, really great little museum.
Yes, and from what I understand, it is really the second biggest venue of art in New Jersey.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Princeton might be the first.
Mm.
Okay.
So go
Um,
ahead. So keep going with
so
this.
I had this idea on the print, and print isn't my field, so it felt like it was okay because it was a one-off.
Mm,
But it was still a drawing idea, and And I said, I would really like to make a painting of this. And the thing was, I said, well, I could get away with it in the print, but I don't have any shadows. And I don't know, I think I've talked about the
Yeah,
fact
right.
that shadows really make the painting.
It does. You're a
And
master at that. It really
thank
looks
you.
realistic.
Thank you so much. But you know, you look at this complicated thing and you say, "Oh my God, what kind of shadows is that going to cast?" And so the simplest thing to do and the fun thing to do was to make it.
Mm,
And so you see on the right, I actually made it and was able to shine a light on it, cast the shadows, and see what it would be like. And so I made it here.
mm,
Um, Slight modifications. You can see that it's four petals
right.
versus two. Um, the perspective on the one on the left actually would not work because that front petal would like whack against the door, but against the frame of the
Right,
door.
right. See that.
But um, here we go.
Oh, there it
From
is.
that last image, I was able to predict the shadows, and
Hmm.
um, I made a drawing that actually fit the whole wooden format, made the wooden format. Now, this sounds terrible, but I first made a 2 foot version of the painting.
Okay.
It's in the show in the Morris. And then I made a 5.5 foot version of the painting, which is at in the Crocker Museum in Sacramento,
Okay.
permanent collection. And part of that is that you can make a lot more changes when it's small. It's a lot easier than when it's 5 feet tall.
Hmm.
Um, and and it makes it such that even though it's a bigger painting, um, so many of the decisions have been made that it really will still only take me about a month and a half to do. And
Those.
believe it or not, the small 2 foot one
Mm.
takes just as long as the big one
Oh, okay.
because I'm making decisions on the first one.
I like that string. It almost looks like that pulley. That's
Hmm.
really well done. You got that so straight, and it really, and the shadows, and it's
Oh
quite a
yeah. And then
complicated
actually,
painting.
if you look here, I don't know whether you can see, I actually got string that has red and white
Oh,
stripes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Ah,
For the models.
right.
And I mean, it was a lot of fun to actually make my painting in 3 dimensions. Um, and actually, for the sorry about that
That's okay.
museum, I also had a colored version of that, which I made after the painting.
Right.
But that wooden version, the sketchy version, was made only for production of the drawing.
Got
And
it.
okay, so it was fun. And
Yeah, I'm
I was
sure.
playing with this cat and mouse idea because the cat chases the mouse, and that was another way of thinking about making movement. Um, Oftentimes in my paintings, if you do an analysis, you'll see that I'll try to get you to make things move in two different ways.
Mm,
Once simply by understanding the machine, but then also possibly from saying, oh, the cat chases the mouse, therefore it comes towards us.
right. See that.
Or in this case, you have the cat up on the top and the mouse underneath, and it is a moving toy. It balances, and
Mm,
that it's an unending chase.
yeah, I see that. Wow, that's really, really great.
Thank you. Um, Again, flying airplanes was something very important to me, and I'm really interested in dirigibles, which are versus blimps. You know the
Mm,
difference. The dirigible has a rigid structure inside, and a blimp doesn't. But that's why the dirigibles needed hydrogen, which is a lot lighter than helium to
right.
lift them, but that's ultimately quite flammable, which is why we don't have dirigibles nowadays. But so I made this model to give me the perspective in the painting.
See
Uh,
that. That
and
there's a lot of dimensions to that when you see it from a distance. It's really like coming at you.
Oh yeah, it's one of my favorite paintings. And here, actually, the machine is going in and out of the painting. Do you see what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, I just
Because
noticed
it's
that.
coming out into our world,
Right,
going in onto
back
the
in.
other side of the picture plane. That
Right.
that was a fun thing for me. That it was like, just in and out of that world and into our
Yeah, it's something how you do that.
wonderful. It's one of my favorite paintings,
Yeah,
actually.
it's great. I mean, the dimensionality is just so in your face. And
Oh yeah.
then you're going back into the painting, into that inside. Who knows where that leads you to in the mind.
Hmm.
There's a lot to think about in this painting.
Oh yeah. And in the mind, that's sort of how I want it to move. I want your mind to start playing with these things and
Mm,
push them around. By the way, these sculptures over here, you can see my cursor, correct?
yes.
Um, they all move. They all actually work.
Oh, I
And
see that.
so I remember um, before an exhibition, I was talking with a critic who was writing about it, and I picked this up, and it started to turn because the airflow was like moving the propellers, and they started to shift around, and she just gasped and said, "Oh my God, look at that!"
Yeah.
Because it as I picked it up and moved it, it was almost like became alive.
Yeah, it does. It's such a good contrast with the painting. It really works so well together. When you see that and then you see it in the painting, it's like you moved it into that dimension.
Yep, yep. And but you know that as far as the drawing goes, the ideas were developed at the same time, so, which is one reason why it fits well, which the shape of the piece, the pattern.
Right.
But then the actual thing needs to be made so that I have the absolute right perspective. Because I can come close in a quick drawing that's from imagination, but and it might be close enough to be convincing, but it's not close enough for me.
Mm.
Um, Here's another one. Obviously, it's not like it's the same image, but it did this little sculpture that I made on the left made me make this image on the right. I like the design better on the right, the bigger circles, this gap being somewhat smaller. But this thing, it started because in an antique store, I found an old,
Oh,
um, I guess, holiday mask, and it was a pair of glasses with eyes in it. And the
mm,
glasses were just simply a piece of loose wire like
mm.
this, been
Right. Oh,
into a
okay.
pair of glasses. And so I popped those out. And actually, I don't know whether you can see it, but those are rivets there. You can actually look through the eyes.
Oh, yeah, I see that.
And they just fit this lorgnette that I got on eBay. It's a sterling silver lorgnette, but it had no
Right.
glass. And so it was relatively cheap, and they just
Mm,
fit, popped them in there, and then made the sculpture work around it. And this painting, they don't have a slide of it, is slated for a museum in California, and
mm.
um,
Okay.
and is also a mural in Davis.
Oh,
It's in a permanent collection of murals.
that
That
is
town
great.
has a collection of murals that they maintain. It's really quite wonderful. It's you walk through it, you've got a guided
Mm.
tour of outdoor sculptures and murals. Fun town.
Oh, imagine. I love those eyes. They're
Hmm.
really great. They're staring right at you.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Now
look at this.
this this is sort of a oh, I don't know what that is. A different direction in the work because yes, it's architectural, but it's more like playing a game. You see
Mm.
that?
Oh, yeah.
Got the little holes here and
Right.
balls that could fit in there and they can move around. And you don't necessarily know the rules, but it feels like a game,
It
doesn't it? I mean,
does.
like it, and you've got red ones and white ones, so it looks like there's some level of competition. And to a certain extent, I had an influence from an earlier 20th century artist named Joseph Cornell.
Okay.
He made these the story is that he made these boxes to be nameless games for his invalid brother.
Oh,
And
okay.
but they became commercially viable and he became quite famous. So on some levels, some people think that really that was a myth that was made up because he was very adept at these and he made them all through his life.
Yep.
And um, he actually had quite a mythology involved with why the pieces went together and what had collected. He's a fascinating artist to look up if you ever have a
I'm
chance.
gonna look him up. It almost looks like what's up top is coming at right in your face. What is that? A place
This
to look? Yeah, what is
a
that?
cupola.
Oh,
It's like one of those things on the top of New England houses.
oh,
And,
right, right.
um,
We have them here in New Jersey too.
yes, I'm sure. And then it also looks like some sort of balconette thing in a
Like,
fancy home.
right. And uh,
And
and you have the shadows again on that that really make it.
and it's a fairly large painting, so it really feels
Mm.
like you've got an object sticking out forward of it. And it is very confusing for pe painters, for people looking at it, because they think, oh, it's really real, but then they find out that it's flat.
Isn't
Um,
that something?
it is.
It does look like it's real and to some extent.
Oh,
It does for sure.
it's a very good illusion in person.
Yeah.
Ex Something I'll point out, actually a couple illusions. This, I'll ask you this because I've actually not asked anybody else. How much does that look like gold leaf?
Uh, yeah, a little bit. I mean, some of it, a couple of it does. It looks a little bit I
Yeah,
don't know.
because it's actually there is gold leaf under there, but then it got a layer of transparent orange paint and then yellow dots
Okay.
to make it have more punch because the gold leaf wasn't working. But I was actually painting it to look like gold leaf. Um,
Okay.
but now here's something else that makes a game like count the numbers or add the numbers up.
So we got nine. We got uh tops in the shadows. That four,
Four,
seven,
three, eight.
right,
So 4, 3, and 8 add up to 15.
right.
4, 9, and 2.
I see that. Nine.
Okay, 15.
Right, all 15.
So 15 this way, this way, this way, this way, this way,
Okay.
and
Ah,
this way,
very clever.
this way.
I was
It,
wondering where you had why you had different numbers at different points. How about that?
it's a magic square. It can be rearranged in a number of ways, and it's a reference to um, 20, I mean, European mathematicians. It was in the very famous Albrecht Dürer print called Melancholia, and it's just hung on some sort of post in it, while the artist god is sort of lowering in a crouch. And and it was also in China used as a way to design cities.
Oh, I didn't know
I
that.
I believe what it was to create
Hmm.
um, areas of lower and higher concentration of buildings without becoming too centralized. So that let's say 9 would have the most buildings, 8 would have the second most buildings, and then but it was a way of distributing um, numbers of buildings as they built up a city or population control.
Right.
Not control, but population distribution. Really an interesting mathematical thing.
It
Plus,
is.
plus a little nod to science and astronomy with the star pattern.
Right. And it adds up to six, one and five. And Tesla said, if you know three, six, and nine, you know the universe. You know the secrets to the universe.
Really?
That's what he
Didn't he
said.
get 3, 6, and 9? Huh.
Yep.
Okay.
And you have those numbers adding up.
Yep. So
Oh,
now,
this is great. One of my favorites.
the one on the right, yeah. Um, it's a really fun one, actually. It went through a number of changes. Talking about the original design, people might think I just sort of execute the painting, but for a while, this had seven big balls on the outside of the painting,
Oh, see
and
that? Okay.
they had to be cut off. And it was just too fussy a painting, and it was very simple. And it's still a very detailed painting, but with all of that, it was way too much stuff going on. Um, and again, I'm playing with the idea of um, the earth, the sky, um, having a blue hemisphere. It's essentially the dome of the sky, but in this case, it's a square.
Well, I
Or
like that square. You didn't make it totally white. I like that. You put a little different color in it. It almost looks
mm,
like it's rusted a little bit.
a little rusted,
Yes,
sort of a blue white, and
right.
then it's got an axis through it. Do you see that? This
Yeah.
like an
What?
axis, kind of like that north-south pole axis. Uh,
Right.
and I called it Square Earth. Um, and what was funny about it is that I don't know whether you know in Chinese, um, there's a character that means China, and of course, every country thinks it's the center of the universe.
Mm,
Um, and it is essentially a square with a line down through the middle,
mm.
saying the center of the four corners of the earth. And I mean, just like in Greece, Delphi has the omphalos, which is where they gave um, oracles or foretellings of the future, and
Right. Mm.
and it was considered the navel, the absolute center of the world. And so Greece was the center of the world for the Greeks. China is the center of the world. Every place is the center of the world for their culture. Um,
The designs around it. What was that? It almost looks like this shirt a little bit. Look at that.
oh yeah, a
Isn't
little
that
like
something? Look at
camo.
that.
Yeah,
But I'm
like
wondering,
camo.
how
But
did you get the idea for that?
I was thinking that it would not a direct reference, but a reference to maps,
Okay.
land and sea and ground. And so here's the other thing is that if you notice we have this ball in this space, I think of these things as possibly revolving around each other as these celestial three-dimensional diagrams.
Right.
Um, the painting on the left was a strange experiment. The idea was what would happen if one of my paintings got cut in half? And you can't see this
Right.
in this slide, but it's painted on the side so that it looks like, oh, you cut down through, say, like a layer cake, and you would see the line on the outside, but then if you cut through, you still see the line.
Yes, I see that. Right. Okay. That's for sure. Oh,
Um,
look at that.
now here's this sculpture was not made with a painting in mind. Um, it was just sort of an idea of how, if the wind blew this, how could it make this go?
Right.
It's
That
sort
is
of the
interesting.
opposite of a whirligig, where the wind blows the propeller and this guy sews something or saws something. It was this would actually change, make something underneath it move around. And I don't know whether you can see it, but there's this line here. As
Yeah.
this moves, it's off center. It goes into this um,
Yeah,
gear.
look at that.
It's that locking gear that you find in a clock and
Right.
pushes these forward. So literally, if you blow on this propeller and turn it around this way, this will start to move as well. Years later, I didn't take the whole piece, but
Yeah,
I
that looks
took
complicated.
that Ferris
Wow.
wheel. Um,
That's
that's not a finished painting yet. It's half finished upstairs in my studio.
what is the significance of you have Z3, Y2, X1, and looks like an A. What are those? Is that reference to anything? Or you
Well,
just
if you remember last lecture, one of the paintings had, oh, I'll go back in it, a 29 in it.
right.
And you said, what does that mean?
Yep.
And I gave you a strange answer, and I'm still going to give you a strange answer.
Okay.
It's the semblance of meaning. It
Okay.
doesn't have meaning, except that given that it's two numbers and it's up there, it makes you say, "Oh, it must have a meaning."
Right. And
There
that's what
are,
it did.
and actually, there are other numbers on it that do have meaning. I've got a date, but in this case, the 29 has no meaning.
Right. See, that makes you think. What is that? Why are the numbers and letters there?
Right. And usually I'm not around to answer and say there is no meaning, but I
Right.
can't to you. So there really isn't. But in this case, um, XYZ, um, y- think about all of your mathematical problems back in high school and in geography, in geometry or in algebra, you would always get A, B, and you'd get X, Y's, and Z.
Right.
And in most higher math, you never really deal with a number greater than three,
Mm.
right? I mean,
Right.
you go through calculus, you hardly ever see anything other than three and a whole lot of letters and a whole lot of Greek letters. Um, so those were the letters and numbers that you would see in math books. And I'll also point out that the typefaces are not contemporary typefaces. They're typefaces from the early 20th century, late 19th century.
Mm.
And so it's a reference to that kind of science thinking.
We've got about 5 minutes
Oh.
left on part two here. So if you want to finish this up and then we'll keep going on the next part.
We'll keep going on the next part, but
Okay.
do one more
Oh
slide.
yeah, sure. Absolutely.
And we'll finish with this slide and then we'll
Okay. Well,
do it again.
okay.
So again, this is a speculative sculpture. It was just an idea that this would pulling that gear, which then pushes this gear and turn these paddles around, or vice versa, that the wind would come, push the paddles,
Yes, I see that.
wind up the weight. But the mechanism never really came into play in the paintings, but the paddles did. So we
No,
see
I see
it
that.
here, and actually we'll see it again in another painting. Um,
I
a
see that.
totally different thing, but all sorts of references. Um, do
Hmm.
you know the architectural reference for this kind of dome?
No.
This is this kind of dome is only found in Greece and Bulgaria.
Oh, how about
It's
that?
really quite fascinating to have
Huh.
a cup at the top, but it goes to a curvilinear bottom as opposed to just arches. And then those domes were typically covered with lead and or copper, and then gone to rust. Um, there's a monastery on the top of Mount Athos in Greece, and there's um, a baptistry. You know, it's like
Oh,
a
I see.
baptismal font, and but in Greek it's called Phial, which is the name of the painting, Phiale. So yeah, reference after reference after
I,
reference. Anybody that's interested can Google it or whatever, or better yet, look in an encyclopedia, and and then and it opens up many more sort of layers of meaning for the painting.
I see that. Yeah.
Perhaps.
Love that dome. Okay, part three here, Richard Whitten. We're back and want to see some more paintings here and describe what you're doing. And it's all yours.
Okay, great. Let's share again. You're going to have a request.
Oh, yeah. Okay, here we go.
Okay. Hmm.
I
Uh,
met Richard at the Morris Museum for anybody that is in New Jersey and wants to visit a really good place. And Richard art was up, and I said, I got to talk to him and see if he wanted to do it. And here we are.
okay. And here we are. Do you see
Okay.
that? Can you see that?
Yes,
Okay, perfect. So I've jumped to the next slide, and so I think that the viewer has realized that there's this like back and forth relationship between making the sculptures and making the paintings. So you'll see that there's a sculpture that relates to the mechanical device on the inside, but then
Right.
the shape of these paddles slash wings slash propeller things on this object are to be seen in the shape of the actual painting. Um,
Mm.
the sculpture on the left, when the propeller turns, a shaft goes in here. There is an angled gear that connects to
Mm.
another angled gear, which turns this disc,
Oh, I
which
see
has an
that.
off-centered axis, which then brings the paddles back and forth in space.
Oh, I see that.
So it actually it does work off the propeller.
Mm.
Or if I were to force the paddles back and forth, that would move the propeller too. Um, but so you can see that connection back and forth between this and the painting. By the
I
way,
can.
this is a gigantic painting. If you remember this one from
I
the museum
do.
show,
It's huge.
it's
It's really huge.
over
Very, very
10
big.
feet wide, 123 inches wide, and about 5+ feet tall.
Mm.
And I actually dedicate it to this strange artist named Charles Delshow. He was um, he was a postman in Texas, and he claimed to have been abducted by aliens. And I think he's the first person to have claimed to have been abducted by aliens.
Mm.
And well, whether that is true or not,
Yeah.
he
Who
ended up
knows?
making drawing after drawing after drawing
Mm.
of their spaceships. And they're beautiful drawings that are half about dirigibles, half about airplanes.
Mm.
Um, no pictures of aliens.
No,
By the
too
way,
bad.
I do have a theory about those drawings of aliens. If you've ever seen a student in drawing who's doing a face and has never done a face before, they sure look like an alien drawing.
Yeah, that's true. That almost looks like ears, coming out.
Yeah, I tend to think of them as wings. And
Okay.
tend to think of this as a bumblebee because
Mhm.
I don't know whether you know, but bumblebees only have two wings, but the other two wings, like on a butterfly,
Right.
become little drumsticks that work like a gyroscope,
Isn't that
which is what
something?
allows the bumblebee to hover and to move forward and to slip side to side. It all has to do with um, getting airborne with the front wings, but directionality with those
Right.
weird
Ah,
drumsticks. Fascinating thing.
yeah, it is.
So wings here, and this is like a gyroscope,
I see that. Wow.
even though this was essentially based on a um, steam engine governor.
Mm.
Mhm. And here's the backside for those of you who are
Wow,
interested.
that is huge.
It is huge. You see it in my
Mm,
studio.
you're right.
Compare it to a wingback chair um, and a drafting table. Yes, it's a big thing. By the way, you see the cursors where these blue pieces
You're
of
right.
tape are. Um, these wing pieces slide out for easier transport.
Oh, okay. I see that. I
Okay,
was
so
wondering how you would get that into a van or a truck that's so big. I see that
well,
now.
it can go into a big truck, but
Right. I
when
see.
it's broken down, it can go into my station wagon.
That is great. That's a great idea.
Mhm. And here's a detail. So you can see the brushwork here.
Right.
And so this is actually knife and brush. This has been brushed over, and then little dots are put on it, and then I scrape the dots into line, almost combing them into line with the tip of an antique scalpel or antique ink scraper.
Right.
Um, you can see this worked surface to give it luminosity, but
Mm.
also volume. So this is I'd say that this is about 15 inches by about 9 inches on the painting.
Yeah, it
Um,
looks so three-dimensional. It's really great.
but also when you get up close, I really love just looking at how the paint is applied, and it's
Mm.
so very physical when you get up close.
Yeah.
It when you look at it online or in a magazine or something like that, it sometimes feels very flat and poster-like, but you never get to see this texture because
No.
that's what I'm working on constantly
Yeah.
as I'm
That's
painting.
what's great.
Mhm. So another body of work I mentioned with that Joseph Cornell painting, the one with the magic square.
Right.
How I was interested in sort of games. Well, this thing on the upper left, this is an actual antique game, and it's something called a dexterity game. I don't know. It's a generational thing. It's actually earlier than my time, but
Mm.
I still had a few as a child. But they were these glass-covered boxes, and you would hold them like this and try to
Right.
the ball bearings into holes, or in this
Mm.
case, into the gears and move the gears
Right.
around. Um, I guess it's like a very primitive Game Boy
Yeah.
thing like that. But I love the fact that you could never touch the ball bearings.
Right.
You actually had to work with it with gravity and skill. And it's like what I wanted people to do with their mind, like pushing the ball
Mm.
into a
Right.
hole or moving the ball across the page or feeling like they could put the machine into motion.
Mm.
And it developed into a whole series of paintings, mostly small, but some rather large, um, about, game boards
Mm.
and potential games. You can see
See that?
you see this, and again, now this is where the letters start to come in because like in Parcheesi or in many games, you'll have numbers and letters, and if you don't
Mm.
know the instructions, you don't know what they're for.
Right.
And so here with the A2, B2, A2, B3, and star, it really looks like, oh, there must be some sort of scoring system.
Yes. That's what it does look like.
And so, and then with this slot, it's like really, it makes you feel like it's a folded page. Um, and because they weren't the main body of work, I really started to play with making the surface of the painting feel like it was three-dimensional, not just things coming up forward of it, like the ball
Right.
or the edges, but look at this one where it feels like
Looks
it's
like an accordion, like you're
yeah,
gonna stretch it in and out. But
and it isn't. It's just a flat piece of wood.
isn't that something?
And that ran. I mean, I'm still doing it.
Mm.
It drives me nuts because um, I have some galleries that like these and some galleries that like the
Mm.
others, and
Right.
I've gotta make both sets of galleries happy.
Oh, I'm sure. Yes, of course.
And so it's just a lot of constant work.
I like
Um,
that card. Uh,
oh, thank
that
you.
is really neat.
A fun one. And also collections of antique cards. Oftentimes, I
Mm.
will buy the things that you see. Um, so that is actually um, a late 19th
Mm.
century Swiss playing card.
Each one of these has its own universe. It's all everyone's different. They're really it's not
Hmm.
that's what I love about your work. It's
Each one
emotion
might have a
and
different set of rules.
right. Your paintings are like in motion. That's what I love about it. It's
Hmm.
constantly it's moving like the earth.
That's right. That's right.
It really
But
is.
remember, it isn't. It's still
Right.
a great
That's
thing. So here the games are getting a little bit more advanced as I um, start to work this idea more. I mean, I this one is such a strange painting because it really
yeah,
feels
it
like there's a
is.
hole in it, and then this slips around back and forth, and it feels like maybe I could pop it into a hole.
Right, right.
Um,
It's
this one, um, oh, I've so many people have really thought that that was three-dimensional.
mm,
Fascinating, yeah.
yeah.
And then this is more typical, but it's slipping forward of that canvas or the panel. And then
Look at that.
I
It's really
took the
different.
ball out and just started playing with how the surface rippled or seemed to ripple.
How big
Um,
are these? How big are these paintings?
these are relatively small. This one on
Okay.
the left is 6 inches by 8 inches.
Okay.
Um, However, I'm thinking of doing a series that will include this one on the left, um, that are in the neighborhood of four by four or four by
Mm,
five. Um, and then, but the other thing that's kind of neat are the very small details that are not necessarily on the front of the painting, but on the side.
yeah, I
This
see
one on the
that.
right, do you see that? As you
Yep.
look at it from the side, you've got all of this striping, which you don't see from the front. But
No.
that, but it really is a pretty convincing illusion of it folding back and forth in space.
Right. That's great. Ah, look at
Is a
those.
recent,
Beautiful.
thank you.
I like the dots, the balls, not even balls, but just dots on those on the right, the top right. That
Hmm.
caught my eye. But they're all unique.
Oh, well, that is something. They all, uh, gosh, I mean, there are a couple that are alike, and I will reuse a few things, but every one is a new thought. It's
Hmm.
not like I'm painting the same picture over and over and over again. Here we go back to the other series, and it's this is one of my favorite paintings. Here's the original sort of drawing that where I was thinking about how
Hmm.
I could make this mechanism.
Right.
See that, I'm actually thinking of it now as a freestanding sculpture, which has not been made, but you can see um, a much taller pedestal, which would not fit into this. But I want to talk about how this painting works.
Yeah, they're really
It's
fascinating.
it is, as you all know, a wooden panel. The sides are built up. If you might have seen it in the picture of the backside of the painting. The side is built up so the painting looks like it's about 2 inches thick. And it's s- set on the wall so that it's a little bit away from the wall, maybe a quarter of an inch, so that it feels like it's a floating object.
Hmm.
And because it's not a rectangle, it really forces the viewer to think of it as a thing. And
Right.
so when they then feel like it's real and they can go behind the wall, it's a much more sort of it physical seeming move than just, oh yeah, I know it's a picture of a dome. But then I'm also playing with this is the moon revolving
That's what
around,
I'm thinking about. It's just
right?
like a sun or the
The
earth and the
sun and
moon
the
with
earth, or the
going
moon and
around. Right.
right. And then this is the dome of the sky. And then
Right.
outside of here,
Yeah, look at that.
have a landscape
Right.
up to the sky. So it's again the earth and the sky, the earth and the
Yeah.
sky. The movement from the earth to the sky is a real thing, the earth to the sky as a painting.
Mm.
Because I don't know whether you can see it, because even in this, it's small. But you'll remember that this is like very real looking, right?
Mm. It
And the
is.
frame is very real looking.
Right.
This balcony or structure here really feels like it sticks forward and then it
It
casts a shadow
does.
on a painting. Because
Right.
this area, this boat, all of this
Yeah.
is,
Mountains,
but it's painted to look like it's a painting, not like it's real. Do you see the
oh
difference?
yeah. It's
And
very
so
mm,
it's two different ways to understand the same thing. And
it
I've never really thought of it until I've had to write about these things recently. But I often play the game in two completely different fashions in each painting.
mm,
One, like this, it's a reality. Yes, yeah, we see the analogy, the thing in the sky, and then this, the thing, the earth and the sky. But this is painted to look real. This is painted to,
right. Looks like behind it.
yep. And
And
then I
it's
even have a shadow cast on it, like, oh yeah, it's painting.
right.
Hmm.
It's your master work with shadows.
Thank you. Yes.
Ah, look
And
at that.
idea after idea after idea after idea. To be honest, I'm working 60 pieces all at the same
60
time.
pieces.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
It's unfortunate.
That's
I
incredible.
go bonkers. Uh,
I imagine.
yeah.
Oh my
It's but
gosh.
but the thing is you can't. stop the brain. And so
Yeah,
you
you
get
love
an
it,
idea for
and you
something,
love it, and it's great work, and
keeps coming. Um, and
hmm,
and there is more and more demand for this idea or that idea. And I get them all started and I slowly try to plug away and finish them. But as I finish, the more ideas come. So it's been around 60 paintings.
oh my gosh. And some of them are still in like this phase. You haven't painted them yet. You're
Um,
just
well,
in
this is the drawing. Actually, all of these have some level of completion. Like
okay.
the least amount. This is this is. I don't know whether you can see it, but
Yes.
it's where it is on this on the easel.
Oh yeah, see that.
Okay.
Yep.
Um, the one to the left of it, you're going to see slides of the finished word version. The one here, we talked about earlier, it's only partially done. This one
Mm,
is completely done and was in the museum. Uh,
right.
the one over here, I'm actually working on that, fleshing out the drawing more and more right
Mm,
now, but the board is cut.
okay.
This one here, um, not completed, but fairly close. The one next to it, the board is cut. This one, oh, actually, that's fascinating.
Right. That is
That's the one that we just looked at.
right.
Yeah, that's an
Ah,
early version of it.
how
And we
about that?
saw the one to the left of that, um, in a finished version, which doesn't have the side wings.
Mm,
Those were actually physically cut off as I, um, made the painting. Um, and and then this last one, the board's been made. I've made two different versions of a finished drawing. I'm for some reason that has literally kicked around for 10 years in a
mm.
drawing and the board being ready. But one I just haven't had the time to put that one together because that's going to take a bit of time.
Now
It,
again,
it's a
what
7 foot painting.
now what is the wood you use again? And you treat it, right? It's treated wood.
Oh yeah, well it's birch ply.
All right.
And to stop it from warping, I put a framework of maple on the back.
Okay.
And then around the sides, I have poplar to make it look like it's um, 2 inches deep. You know, the edge of plywood is not very handsome.
Right.
And then before I put paint on it, I put 2 layers of rabbit skin glue down,
Mm,
and then
Lord.
2 layers of an oil lead prime.
Wow.
Um,
And how long does that take to uh, be able to paint on it? Is it a couple
well,
weeks? Is it months? Is it?
let's see. Um, To actually build the panel, typically 4 days,
Oh, all right.
um, with an assistant. And and then the 2 layers of rabbit skin glue will take two 2 days to apply, but a week to dry.
Okay.
Um, at which point I put on the first layer of oil prime. I have to wait a week, and I put the second layer of oil prime on. And if I paint on it, I have to paint on it starting in the first month, or I have to wait for 6 months.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Because either I put new fresh paint on the oil prime because they'll shrink at the same rate,
Right.
or I have to wait till it's dry and then I can put new paint on that will shrink, but
I'll tell
without
you.
the lower area shrinking. But if they have differential shrinkage, it will create a crackle or a shear issue, which will make the paint fall off.
Now, do you want to show the video now, or do you have some more
Oh,
slides?
we have more slides.
Okay, sure.
It's
Keep going.
yeah.
Keep
Um,
going.
because there you are.
Oh,
There
there you go.
you
Wow.
can see a notebook drawing on the right. This is how
Right.
it's like the idea comes into play. There I am with the board
Yeah.
that
Right.
actually happens, and you can see the scale.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's huge. Look at
and
that.
there's, oops, sorry, a
Wow.
small version of the painting. This is the 3D model, which allowed me to get the perspective on the balls. And there's the big painting, which is 8 feet tall.
Oh, man. I love that. The windows on that, it looks like almost it looks like a huge
Casting light.
place.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted it to be like almost like a dirigible hanger. Um, but now let's take a look at this.
Mm,
This is where I've invented a perspective system, which is not typical.
mm,
Um, Many of your viewers will know about the vanishing point, but will know that they've done the railroad track drawing that goes off to the horizon, and there's one vanishing point, and all the trees along the road vanish to it, all the like electric lines, and then the railroad ties go to it, and it's just one point.
mm.
Now the problem is that if you've got a tall painting or a big painting, it makes it look very flat. So what I've actually done is I've got a vanishing column. Do you see how these lines down here go to point there?
Right.
These
See
lines go
that?
up, and they're all on the same vertical, but
Mm,
the taller things go to points higher up. And it's mathematically proportionately different.
mm.
Like this will go to here, this is here, this is the same distance down. This is longer, so you can see that there's a bigger gap here.
Right.
And what
Mm,
that does is that it makes the space seem to open up in the back.
mm.
It makes the space much vaster looking than, or much more vast looking than
Oh,
if I had had a single vanishing point.
oh, it
Um,
really does.
so interesting. People, it's a mathematical sleight of hand.
It
Um,
does.
other images, I've always thought it was fun to think about levitation, but you use a
That
string to hold it
definitely
up.
looks like it.
Yes, but remember, you're holding them up with string.
Right, right. And I love the shadows on that.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah,
Again, the shadows make it.
it does.
Mhm.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
Like the blue on that. Love that color.
It is a great blue, isn't
It
it?
is
Blue's really
beautiful.
very beautiful, very, very difficult to work with, to be honest, because
Mm,
as you modify blue, it gets oddly pale, and or else it becomes black. Um,
mm,
Strange thing. But now I'm coming to this project that I've worked on for about 3 years now, and it's near fruition. Only another 9 months or so.
mm,
Um, I'm working with a sculptor, um, and both of us realized that we were very interested in scientific instruments and also the history of science, and
mm,
we used it in our art. So we said, okay, let's make a project together where we pick 6 historical scientific instruments, and Richard, you make paintings and I'll make sculptures.
mm,
And and um so we're both making 6 pieces based on the originals, and then we're both making 6 pieces of instruments that we've invented.
oh, okay.
Okay. And these pieces have come from the Museo Galileo in Florence, and the the show's going to be first opened up at my college, Rhode Island College, and
Okay.
here, and the sculptor Doug Bosch is a sculpture faculty here at Rhode Island College, and and then we're hoping that it travels from museum to museum.
Mm.
In fact, the director at the Morris Museum has said that he'd help us in the future.
Oh, very good.
So, I mean, it's one of these things that's sort of self-generated, but it's really starting to take off.
Well, that's good.
Not only that, for that project, for my half of the project, last year I got a um, Pollock Krasner grant, which was quite a substantial
Oh,
amount.
that's really good. Now,
Prize.
do you sell these privately too, or is it mostly for museums that most of
This
your art,
this
most of your
particular
paintings?
project will not be sold.
I see.
What we're hoping is that it travels as a group and
That would be great.
eventually possibly becomes part of the collection of the Museo Galileo in Florence.
Oh boy, that'd be really something.
So these are the original pieces that are
Okay.
in the museum. And then here are drawings that I'm making.
Mm.
Some of them you'll recognize that. That's mine.
Yep.
Um, this is a new one that I've invented. This is actually from that old first um, print that I made in Ireland. This, of course, is original, and the Museo Galileo was funded by the Medici. It's been around 500 years, so it was funded by
Mm,
the Medicis and then the House of Lorenzo. I actually made it to be like an illuminated manuscript. And the first
yeah.
page of every
Wow.
illuminated manuscript has got to be the thank you, patrons of the arts. And so I've got the Medici symbols here, the House of
I
Lorenzo
see that.
on the right, and you'll see Medici symbols or Lorraine symbols all through the pieces. Um, okay. Here are the other three, other six.
Mm, yeah, I
Um,
see that.
and then this is where they are right now. They are not finished.
Oh, okay.
They're not finished by a long shot, but you can see where they're going.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it almost looks finished to me.
Oh yeah, that's what people say, but they're
It
not
does look
by a
not
long
yet,
shot.
huh?
Not at all.
Wow.
Um, all of these edges need to be
Mm,
lightened by what a photographer would say is about a stop and a half to two stops.
okay.
All of these sort of flat colors need to be textured. This
Mm,
one I'm hoping to be textured so it looks like cement or
mm,
stucco, but
right.
this is going to be more of parchment,
Mm,
a parchment texture. I remember it's meant to be an illuminated manuscript. This is parchment again. This is the one of the first times that I'm going to use pure white as a
okay.
color.
Ah, okay.
Pure white straight out of the tube.
How about that? Yeah, I see that. Very bright.
And well, it's very bright right now. That's only the first layer, which is why you're starting to
Mm,
see the underpaint through it. But with the next layer, it's just going to be like a flat, hard surface. So lots need to be done, but you can see where it's going. A lot of people say, "Oh, it's done," but no,
yeah, that's what I
it
thought.
took good 3 or 4 months
Mm,
that uh, as long as I get to work on them because I'm actually working on other projects right now. Um, And so we're at the point where maybe we could show the video.
yeah, you might as well before we run out of time here. So
Okay. So,
let's see the video, and that'd be great to wrap it up with that. But this has
okay.
been quite a fascinating trip through your art.
Okay. So I'm going to stop share because I have to get off this. Um, I'm putting this up and I'm going to share this page.
Okay.
Is that right? No, it's this page. There we go. And do you see that now?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Bringing it out to here. And
Yep.
here we go.
All right.
They're almost not paintings. I see them as things that shift from being an object to a painting. I want the viewer to have almost a physical journey from the object nature of the painting to to the surface of the painting and then into the illusion of the painting. I want them to be sort of sucked in like it's a world that they can explore and play in. That line between the everyday and and the world of the imagination is very soft, very blurry, very penetrable. And that's really what I want to have happen with these. It's like this is a solid piece of wood. It's got a certain thickness, it's got a certain shape. And then you work across the surface, these illusions of shallow moves that come out into the world of the viewer, and then we shift back into space. We're sucked into that world. And it's a beautiful world on the other side. The first thing that comes is probably a concept. I say, I want to make an object or a mechanism that flaps. And I'm going to research how an ornithopter flaps its wings off a crankshaft. Once I know that, I start to develop a machine in my notebooks. And then before that machine gets quite finalized, I start saying, well, it also has to be part of a painting. It needs architecture to work with it. I need to design that too. because these are on-shaped panels, I need to work it out pretty well. So I actually do draft things out. And many decisions are made at that time because I'm really very interested in small proportions. Little proportions make a huge difference to me. I struggle over changes of half a millimeter at times on certain parts of the painting. I look at my drawings as working drawings, even though these are sort of fine line drafting. They're really kind of messy because I do a lot of my thinking at this stage too. Even as a child, I always made things, but I also always drew. But the two ideas were kind of separate. I developed very fine building technology, building skills. And I was also, growing up in New York, always going to the museum. And I have to say, I didn't really care for paintings. I thought sculptures were way more interesting because they were the thing itself. And I said, I'm really not interested in making pictures of things. Well, you grow up in an apartment in Manhattan, and space is an issue. That's how sculptures just didn't seem very feasible. I was working on the skills, and all through college, I did take art courses, even though I was an economics major. I went to Yale, economics and math, and I went to UC Davis to work with Tebow and Arneson. And I did develop the representational skills, but I wasn't excited about painting until I discovered the abstract expressionists, because then a painting was an object. A painting was a thing that was also simultaneously an image. And that to me was what was really quite exciting. Something that happened as I started to become representational was I said, well, I have a problem with the rectangular format. Then the next thing that happened was I started to go wood, and then I was able to shape the piece so that it got away from rectangular. I go back and forth between drawing, building, drawing, and painting from the object. Certain objects, the ones that are rotational, the ones that go this way in relationship to the picture plane, I usually want to build those before I draw them because the perspective on it can be surprising. And the worst thing is shadow, because I was putting these objects in the paintings into hemispheres, and the shadows that these complex objects cast on the inside of a dome, I had no way to predict that. And as I was making them, I said, this is incredible fun. And so I've continued doing it. And I actually really look forward to doing it. I actually think that playing is incredibly important for human beings. I often tell people that there's a real difference between playing and playing. And playing is about experimenting about how to learn how to live. The most important thing that we can do is fiddle with something. I think we all make every sort of mistake that we can possibly make. And the ones that learn from it are the ones that don't make the mistake again and figure out another route to go and find a new set of mistakes that they can make. And that's what these paintings are. They set up new problems. I teach at Rhode Island College. I've been there about 20 years. I'm teaching all levels of painting. I'm also teaching of course, it's modified over time. It's called contemporary issues for the artist. We find that our students need much more contemporary theory than they have. I'm talking more and more about professionalism and the relationship between museums and galleries. And you can never know too much about the professional side of this business, because it is a business. I talk about gardens a lot when I talk about looking at art, because gardens are an organized form of nature.
And most people don't realize that there's a real sense of progression through a garden, just like there's a progress through a piece. We have certain key interests that guide us. And I actually do think that any artist who matures has been able to hone down the number of interests that are key to him. I realize that the interests that I have are organizing space, creating activity or life like this or animation within that space. It is also a conversation between me and a viewer. It's something to be shared. These are my vehicle for speaking with an unnamed companion. I mean unnamed because I don't know who might be looking at them. I may not be there, but the painting speaks for me. And I truly hope that these things bring intellectual and emotional pleasure to somebody else. Really, just somebody else.
Oh, very good.
Here we go.
Well, Richard, we're just about running out of time here.
What's up, guys?
You have
Ben Kohler,
actually.
the
That
Tackle
was great.
Talk here at the
I
Hood of
mean,
Tackle.
that
Today,
sums it up.
talk
So,
about the top
I'm gonna
perfect
get
timing.
rid of that fishing thing here.
That was, it's okay. That was great.
20 years ago, I started guiding. Drop shotting was really big.
I don't know how to
thing
do
that was
that.
moving here to the U.S. And
I
still
think
to
you
this
just
day,
click it
later,
off, I think.
it still has this
I'm trying
big
to.
mystique from a lot of
It's okay.
guys. Just finding out about it, just learning about it.
Well,
Here in the shop, we're
Well,
always
anyway, it's been a pleasure. That's okay. See how things happen by mistake, right? The world is full of mistakes, right? But I want to thank you for coming on and being the guest. Fantastic art, fantastic paintings. And where are you going to be next? Where's the next show at?
I'm going to be in a show, a solo show here in Rhode Island at the Bannister Gallery at the Rhode Island College in November.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'll come up and see it.
Oh, you should.
I'm going to try.
Opens, I think the 6th or 7th. I'll tell you.
Keep me updated on that. Maybe I'll drive up and see it.
Okay.
Well, thanks a lot. Mistakes happen. Anyway, great art, fantastic mechanical art, and thank you for doing this.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And keeping up the great work. Thank you now. I'll see you soon. Bye. Take care.